Hello, hello. Welcome back to Bad Ideas Podcast. We're here with Rapudaman, host of the most serious podcast, which I think you kind of got started in a similar way to us, right?
Yeah, I mean, I am trying to remember the last time I was introduced as the host of the most serious podcast. Maybe it's been a while, but
Yeah.
I just would want to take a moment and tell that by the sound of it, it sounds the most serious podcast. I think if you go literally, but it's definitely not the most serious podcast. It's just a
Yeah.
way of expression that I use. And let me just tell a little bit about myself. I'm a 22-year-old from New Delhi, India. And I started this podcast a couple of years ago, and this allowed me to talk to very interesting people present around the world, and let me ask them questions, tinker with their brain. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Because I'm very curious, and naturally, I sometimes find humans very interesting, and the mind very interesting on why someone chooses to do something instead of the other, and why a very different person could end up choosing what the other didn't choose. So I just find that very fascinating. So that's kind of the reason I started the podcast. And currently, I'm working in a management consulting firm, and I try to keep up with the podcast, which in itself is a task. But yeah, I'm very happy, that Nick, that you're doing this. I believe it's a very interesting thing that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll have fun with it. I'd say there are definitely bad ideas here, in spite of the fact that our name is also Bad Idea. So we'll dig into that. But I think there's going to be a unique skill set, right, of folks who can get on and do this. We talked about this earlier. Like, I really want to showcase the creativity behind business ideas that get out in public, because I think most people are used to just seeing the final product, but aren't familiar with all the pieces and all the thinking that goes into these things. So getting on the phone with super smart folks like you, who see this across a number of businesses, plus kind of do it on your own, I think makes kind of an entertaining show. So I'm hoping that'll work for us today.
I hope you are not so serious when you said super smart folks like me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 22-year-olds don't make it into management consulting if they're not. But I was watching the podcast too. You've got a couple episodes with tens of thousands of views. You're reaching a lot of people with what you put out there, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So go for it.
So what you said, it's the same intent. I really love the authenticity that you have. And sometimes I feel that's the only way that, natural expression works. And if you've got a medium, there's no better way to put out your authentic self.
Yeah, there you go. Well, on to authenticity. So just quick review of the rundown of operations here. So, we've introduced you. We have a professional host here with Mega Reach. Next, we'll take a look at the bad idea. Then we'll talk about why it's such a bad idea, and we'll do our best to, tick off all the reasons that come to mind. And then we'll flip the script and we'll try to turn it into something viable as a business. So we'll actually have to use our brains to show people some of that brainstorming, and hopefully it'll be entertaining. Are you ready?
I am ready as I could be.
All right. So let's look at the bad idea. To pull it up. So our bad idea today is a 24-hour sunscreen shop, because sun protection is a round-the-clock necessity. So that's all the information we have on this bad idea. There's no business plan or anything, but I'm imagining like someone thinking about a pop-up shop, some kind of retail location where they sell you sunscreen. But I mean, in India, is sunscreen a hot commodity? It's hot there for sure, but are people outside in the sun in the summer and lathering up like they do here in the States?
I think I'm not the best person to answer this question, but funnily enough, the last episode that I recorded on my show was from a founder of a skincare brand. So we ended up talking about sunscreen only, and I recorded it with her on Saturday morning. Was it? Yeah, Saturday afternoon kind of. And she was telling me about how I should also get up serious about my skincare and how sunscreen is so important. So I think people are catching up to the sunscreen movement here in India as well. And it's definitely in summers, it gets, really hot and humid, and, the sun's just really in your face, quite literally. So it's it's definitely, I think it could be a hot product, and I'm not sure that it is currently, but I'm seeing people, getting more and more into skincare and getting more and more into sunscreen. So in India, I would still be skeptical about many people just rushing to get sunscreen, but now they're kind of catching it up.
Yeah, interesting. So, I think more than sunscreen as a product on its own, I think the reason this is such a horrible business idea is that your market is during the day. Who buys sunscreen? When we think about going out at night, you're, maybe going out to a show or to a bar, or to a restaurant, or to visit people and be social. But, sunburn is not the top risk because the sun's nowhere to be seen, literally, at night. So thinking through this, if you're operating a sunscreen vending location overnight, 50% of the time your store is operational is not when your target market is in market for your products. That makes it a pretty bad idea. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy which kind of simplifies this for people, but it's almost like, I don't know what it could be, as people still eat ice creams in winters. I'm trying to think of something that, as stupid as...
I was thinking like bobsledding, right? Like an ice bobsledding track that's, open year round in a location in summer. It's impossible to keep it frozen.
Nick, have you seen The Office?
I've seen an episode of The Office. I'm a horrible TV person.
So in Office, I can remember one of the episodes similar to this, and I might be, just missing out on a couple of details, but it's like Dwight, a character on The Office, or Andy, or someone from The Office, the cast. They propose an idea to their boss, and they say, why can't we open up a Halloween shop that's open all year round? And it's kind of... It's like, that's why it's so stupid, Halloween happens like for a week, maybe that's the celebration goes on from October until November first week, but that's pretty much about it. You don't need, no one's going to Halloween shopping in April or February.
Yeah, right. We have, marketing out of season. Like that's the name of this idea. That's why it's so big. Promoting guaranteed 50% of the time when your product is not primed to sell. But, I mean, this does bring up kind of an interesting point. In marketing on the growth side of the business, I think because communication channels have multiplied so much over the last 15, 20 years, like almost every day there's a new medium through which you can reach people. Like we're not even scratching the surface of AR and MR. But all these, and that's when you're superseding an image on top of reality through like a lens or a camera or something, or like Apple Glass now. And I think, because there's so many communication touch points out there, marketers are having to increase the time period and increase the number of touch points they need to make with customers before they buy. Now we're kind of flipping into making a bad idea a good idea. Like maybe that's, in a place like India, for example, or as I've learned in the Middle East, apparently schedules, I don't know if you knew this, but schedules completely flip in the Middle East. During the summer, because it's so unbearably hot, people sleep all day and get up and work all night. So they'll work till 4 or 5 in the morning and then go to sleep because it's just too hot to be outside.
I didn't know this.
In a place, we're still a bad idea if we're in the Middle East because then you're open during the daytime when everybody's sleeping. But, going back to that marketing discussion, I think if you're increasing the number of touch points and the time horizon you use to engage your audience, maybe there is a way to make it profitable to have an episodic store like Sunscreen open 24/7. I think we'll have to put our thinking hats on it, come up with a way we can make that useful. Anything coming to mind?
Yeah, even when we were discussing the stupidity of this idea, but something came to my mind, which was kind of like, is it so much so, now since the times have changed and we were talking about AR, MR and, all this jazz, and we are seeing this in real life as we speak, things are changing, and, this conversation happening 6 months later, and I believe 18 months later, that this could be one of, the greatest ideas ever. So it's just the nature of change, people listening to this conversation, let's say someone listens to this after 3 years and they're sitting outside of that sunscreen store at 8 p.m. in the night. So that's just the nature of, change that's happening. And that's why it's kind of, hard to pin something as, completely out of scope. But what came to my mind was having a store or having some place which is kind of, providing a commodity which becomes or, takes place of an essential. Then you don't necessarily don't need to worry about the distribution as much as you need to worry about, how as a business, like if I were working in this company, so I would be taking a lot of interest into how am I able to promote the essentiality of this commodity, because the distribution kind of aligns again, exactly. If you think of if you go back to very basics and if you try to think about why do even 24-hour stores exist? Like, why do we need an idea like, why do we need that availability of all time? We need essentials, essentially. That's the whole idea behind it. Someone could need, emergency medical care. Maybe they could need a band-aid. Maybe they could need, someone could be cooking food and, they run out of something. And that's why you have these 24-hour available shops or outlets, because you might, if you just try to trim down everything and if you get to the core, I think that's why the essentiality of the commodity kind of dictates the distribution. So in that regard, maybe moving forward, once people start realizing, how much, and coming from the conversation that I had with the, founder of that skincare brand, and she was talking about how we often view sunscreen or any skincare as, a gender biased thing. And it's like women are more into skincare than men. But she was like, if you have skin, then skincare is for you. It's not that complicated.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there. So clearly you are super smart. I want to double underline that. But, looking at this as a commodity, the active word I heard throughout that was distribution. So you're looking at this as more of a distribution center than a store on its own. And I think that's really fascinating. Is that not what you were saying, or is that kind of along the lines of what you were saying?
Yeah. So when I think of it, I kind of wouldn't want to limit my, just scope. Like if I were to just think of it as a store, maybe then it would be a different story than that I would be telling. But when I think of it, in general as an idea, which doesn't have a bounded scope already. Once we started discussing, we were just talking about a store and maybe, how that could be an idea. But like, if I think about multiple stores and if I just think about the crux of what we're trying to solve, it's like, in Philadelphia, how many 24-hour sunscreen stores do you want to open? So essentially you want to think about what exactly are you trying to tackle. It's not just a store. The store is just a medium to the solution that you're providing. What's the bigger picture here? So I was thinking on those lines, but that's why I was talking about terms like distribution, and that's why I was talking about, the commodity side of it. But if we just make it very simple, maybe I'm blabbering too much, but it's like, if we just try to think of like a simple store. Let's say a random person walks up and thinks, just is standing outside of the store and thinks, is this something that's a good idea? Then what do you think comes first to mind? What would be like a positive pro and con of that person? Like a random person walking outside of a sunscreen store that's open 24 hours, what would be their view of it?
Yeah. Well, riffing, I still want to go back to distribution because now I have an idea, but riffing on the store on its own, I think the convenience of it is good, right? So you think about a condo city. I grew up or near a small town with tons of condos. Everyone goes there to be by the beach in the summer. And if you have like a 24-hour sunscreen shop there, where there's, dozens, there's maybe 50, 60 condos in the area, plus summer rentals, plus restaurants. So people are out and about and they happen to be walking back to their car and see the sunscreen shop. Maybe you would do some business at night. I mean, you're probably not going to sell a lot of sunscreen at 4 or 5 in the morning, but, people might find it convenient and they might think to buy it when they're all dressed up and not running to the beach more than they would when they're running to the beach. I mean, I bet you the analytics on that would be fascinating. How much sunscreen is sold off hours versus during the day. I bet you like 11 a.m. is the worst time to sell sunscreen because everyone's already doing the thing that they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Those are my ideas. What do you think someone would think, if they were in front of a 24/7 sunscreen store?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think, because sometimes I feel if you I think the best way to think about anything that you're trying to sell is from the customer point of view, and you really want to dig deep into what your customer demographic is, and you want to think from that profile. What is that person's life like? What is their day like? What are their influences that end up making them, allowing them to make a decision. So you really want to think about those factors. And if we get into the nitty gritty of it, we could go deep into where are we planning to open up a sunscreen store, and then maybe we could get more details on the customer profile. But I believe, for one, if we put an average person outside of a sunscreen store, it would be just like, it would depend on how important they think a sunscreen is, because there would be your good old Joes who would be like, I don't need sunscreen, I've got the skin, and it just doesn't get. Sunscreen is for babies, sunscreen is for women, and things like these. But it's like, you really just want to think about, do people actually feel that it's a product that's as useful as having it conveniently open. Like, if I ask you, and you're maybe if you just answer it from an unbiased view, what would be something that you wouldn't care if it's available 24 hours or not? Like a commodity that you could buy, maybe a football, maybe a baseball bat.
No, you definitely need baseball bats 24/7, I think. What wouldn't I care about 24/7? Like cell phone cases, protective gear. I think you only need that in an instant. And I think sunscreen is kind of analogous to protective gear because its function is to protect you. So I think we're getting back to the crux of why this was a bad idea in the beginning. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it answers my question also. And it also, speaks volumes on how simple it is sometimes. You answered, in an instant, you knew that something like a cell phone case isn't as valuable to me, and wouldn't be as valuable to me that I would require, an outlet that sells it 24/7. I could wait like 8 hours, get up out of bed when the store's open, and I could get a cell phone cover if mine is broken and if I want to change. So I think the crux of this idea, and I really love the concept of, this is a very fun exercise. I think I would do it on my own, right? Advise something is, completely out of whack, and it could be a terrible idea. But then you can maybe in the process, like the conversation that we had, it allows us to really think about the factors that go into deciding, whether an idea is good or bad.
Yeah. Well, let's conclude this bad ideas brainstorm with one last bad idea, courtesy of me. So earlier you mentioned distribution, and this is where my mind went when you were talking about the 24-hour store. Because when you look at the way most businesses operate, like they'll stock super early in the morning or take a delivery late at night before they, open the next day. And that's it. But when you think about something like sunscreen, that generally people are probably selling out of every day because they have pretty dialed into demand. There's probably always a need for more. And then you layer on the way that Amazon handles fulfillment, where they process orders during the day and they ship at night. They use evening to distribute their product. So it's kind of like one big warehouse to smaller warehouses to end consumers. What if the store pivots from B2C to B2B at night? And it's open 24/7 because sunscreen vendors are able to visit the store and stock up so they're ready during the day. So they always know they have a supply and they always have a place where they can restock regardless of making a major PO. Then this is an interesting idea, right?
This is definitely interesting. I'm just blown away by the, by the ability that you could just, think this out of hat. And it's definitely very interesting. And I this didn't come to me, but now thinking about it, I think it's very viable. It's a very good use case rather. It's like combining the best of both worlds. I think this is definitely something to think about. Yeah. I admire it.
Well, I think that's the magic of this. That's why I think I wanted to put the podcast together, because most people, they see products, like we have like Samsung headphones, right? They see the final product, but they don't understand the thousands of conversations like this that happened before something was released. Or if it's Apple's case, they don't understand there was an entire business unit dedicated to doing this at a far more scientific level for years before this came to existence. They only see like a nice $100 product that helps them have conversations, listen to music. And I think that's the really incredible part of business, all the thinking that goes into it on the back end. And I'm really grateful that you were able to kind of come on and help me share some of that today.
It was a pleasure. I think I didn't even realize that we've been talking for like 15-20 minutes now, but it's, I just loved the flow, and I really, I'm really excited by the idea that you have. It's fresh, it's honest. I think in this world of, people trying to mimic something or else, or people just looking at the optimistic side always, I think it's very refreshing to see that you could acknowledge and say that something is terrible, and then maybe along the lines that you can figure it out if it's a good idea or not. I love it.
Yeah, making it entertaining is key. So everyone, check out the Most Serious podcast. You see some more Ravutamon, and hopefully we'll have this up in the next month or so, looking for a September launch. So thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks, Nick. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, we'll do it again.